The year is 2007. The setting is the humid, pine-scented air of Pickens County, Alabama. A white van pulls off the highway and crunches onto the gravel driveway of a modest brick building. An old man steps out. He is 86 years old. His knees are stiff, and he leans heavily on a cane. He adjusts his suit jacket, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. He is a long way from home. His name is Walter. He has traveled over 4,000 miles from the Rhineland in Germany to this tiny, sleepy town in the American Deep South called Aliceville. He is not a tourist. He is not a businessman. He is a ghost. As he walks toward the entrance of the Aliceville Museum, his eyes scan the perimeter. The guard towers are gone. The barbed wire that once stretched for miles is rusted away or buried under 60 years of kudzu and soil. But he sees them. In his mind, they're as sharp and silver as they were on that day in 1943. A local woman, the museum director, steps out to greet him. She smiles warmly. "Welcome back, Walter," she says. The old man tries to speak, but his voice catches in his throat. He looks at the ground, the red Alabama clay. He falls to his knees. He isn't praying. He is remembering. He weeps. Not tears of sadness, but tears of an emotion so complex it barely has a name. It is a mixture of shame, relief, and an overwhelming, crushing gratitude. I was dead. I died in Afrika. And here, in this place, you brought me back to life. Walter was a soldier of the Wehrmacht, a sworn enemy of the United States, a man who, in his youth, wore the uniform of the Third Reich and fought to kill American boys. And yet, he has returned to say the two words that have haunted him for a lifetime. Thank you. To understand this scene, to understand why a Nazi soldier would weep with love for a town in Alabama, we must strip away the years. We must leave the peace of 2007 and travel back to the hellscape where his journey began. We must go to Tunisia, May 1943.
North Africa, the end of the line. For 2 years, the German Afrika Korps had been the masters of the desert. Under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, they had danced circles around the British. They were the elite, the sun-bleached ghosts of the Sahara. But by the spring of 1943, the dance is over. Rommel has been recalled to Germany. The Allies, the British 8th Army pushing from the east, and the new American forces pushing from the west, have crushed the German army into a small pocket in northern Tunisia. The situation is catastrophic. The German supply lines have been strangled by the Royal Navy and the American Air Force. Let us zoom in on a single slit trench outside of Tunis. Inside sits Walter. He is 20 years old. He is not the blonde, Ardian Superman depicted in the propaganda posters back in Berlin. He's emaciated. He weighs 130 pounds. His uniform is bleached white by the sun and stiff with sweat and grease. He has dysentery, like half the men in his platoon. He has not eaten a full meal in 3 weeks. The Afrika Korps is running on fumes. They are boiling desert weeds to make soup. They are filtering radiator water to drink. But the worst thing is not the hunger. It is the noise. For 48 hours, the artillery barrage has been ceaseless. The ground vibrates with a constant, rhythmic thumping. It is the sound of the American industrial machine. Walter checks his rifle. He has 5 rounds left. He looks at his machine gunner, a boy named Hans from Hamburg. Hans is staring blankly at the horizon. "They are coming," Hans says. "Who?" Walter asks, though he knows. "The Amis, the gangsters." This is what they have been told. The Nazi propaganda machine, led by Joseph Goebbels, has been terrifyingly effective. The German soldiers believe that the Americans are not soldiers, but Chicago gangsters released from prisons to fight in the war. They have been told that the Americans do not take prisoners. They have been told that if they surrender, they will be castrated. They will be tortured. They will be shipped to labor camps in the frozen wastes of Alaska or the swamps of Louisiana to be worked until their hearts explode. Surrender is not an option. Surrender is death. May 12, 1943, the final collapse. General von Arnim, commanding the remaining Axis forces, sends the signal. It is all over. The order goes down the line. Destroy your weapons. Cease fire. In his trench, Walter hears the shout from his sergeant. Break the rifles. Smash the sights. Walter takes his Karabiner 98K rifle, the weapon he has cleaned and oiled every day for 2 years, and smashes the stock against a rock. He pulls the bolt out of the sand and hurls it into the sand. It feels like breaking his own arm. He is disarmed. He is naked. Then the sound changes. The artillery stops. The silence is sudden and deafening. Then comes a low rumble. Over the dune comes a shape that will haunt the nightmares of the German army for the rest of the war. An M4 Sherman tank. It is ugly, tall, and loud. It clatters over the sand, its turret traversing slowly. Behind it walk the Americans. Walter stands up. He raises his hands. His heart is hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He waits for the bullet. He closes his eyes and thinks of his mother in Cologne. Make it quick, he prays. Hey, Fritz! Walter opens his eyes. An American soldier is standing 10 feet away. He's chewing something. He holds a rifle loosely in one hand. He looks casual, sloppy even. His helmet is unbuckled. He looks nothing like the disciplined Prussian soldiers Walter is used to. The American walks up to him. He is young, maybe 19. He has freckles. The American reaches into his pocket. Walter flinches. Is he pulling a knife? A pistol? The soldier pulls out a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes. He shakes one out and offers it to Walter. He stares at it. He hasn't seen real tobacco in 6 months. His hands are shaking so badly he can barely take it. The American lights it for him. War's over for you, buddy, the American says. He speaks no German, but the tone is clear. It isn't hatred, it's pity. Then the American unclips his canteen and hands it over. Drink, you look like hell. Walter takes a sip. It is water, heavily chlorinated, warm and tasting of metal. But to Walter, it tastes like wine. He passes the canteen to Hans. They drink. They look at each other. Where is the torture? Where is the execution? The American gestures with his thumb toward the rear. Go that way. Walking tour. Walter begins to walk. He passes hundreds, then thousands of his comrades, a sea of field gray uniforms flowing toward the coast. They are defeated, they are ashamed, but they are alive. And for the first time, a question enters Walter's mind. If the propaganda lied about the Americans killing us, what else did they lie about?
The scale of the surrender in Tunisia is staggering. Over 275,000 Axis soldiers are captured. It is a disaster comparable to Stalingrad, though less spoken of in Germany. The Allies are overwhelmed. They did not expect this many prisoners. They have to build makeshift camps in the desert, huge squares of barbed wire in the sand. Walter and his unit are herded into one of these pens near Oran. The conditions are rough. There is no shade. The men dig holes in the sand to escape the sun. There are no latrines yet, just trenches. The smell is horrific. For a few days, the fear returns. Is this the plan? To leave them here to rot in the sun? But then the trucks arrive. American 2.5-ton trucks, the deuce and a half, convoy after convoy. They bring water tanks, they bring crates of rations. Walter watches the distribution. In the German army, supplies were carefully rationed. Everything was counted. Here, the Americans seem to have an endless supply of everything. An American guard tosses a box of sea rations to Walter. He opens it. Inside, there is a tin of meat and vegetable stew, a tin of biscuits, a packet of instant coffee, a chocolate bar. Chocolate! Walter holds the chocolate bar. It is melting in the heat. He takes a small bite. The sugar rushes to his brain. He breaks it into tiny pieces and shares it with the men in his squad. They eat it slowly, savoring every molecule. He looks through the wire at the American camp across the road.
He sees them washing their jeeps with fresh water. He sees them throwing half-eaten sandwiches into the trash. The wastefulness of the Americans shocks him. To a German soldier, wasting food is a crime. To the Americans, it's just abundance. It is a display of logistical power that frightens Walter more than the tanks. How can we fight a country that has so much food they throw it away? Rumors begin to fly through the camp. They are taking us to England. No, to Siberia. The Americans are handing us to the Russians. I heard we are going to America. America? Hunts laughs, lying in the sand. How? They don't have enough ships to take 250,000 men across the ocean. The U-boats would sink them all. It seems impossible. To transport this many men across the Atlantic at the height of the submarine war would be madness. But the order comes down 2 weeks later. Pack your kit. You are moving out.
They are marched to the harbor, and there, filling the horizon, is the answer to Hans's doubt. Ships. Dozens of them. They are ugly, gray, utilitarian vessels, the Liberty ships. The Americans are building them faster than the U-boats can sink them. Walter is herded up the gangplank. He is stripped of his remaining German gear, his helmet, his belt, his medals. He is given a basic kit. He descends into the hold of the ship. It is a cavernous steel belly. 5 tiers of canvas bunks are stacked from floor to ceiling. It is crowded, hot, and noisy. 4,000 men are packed into a single ship. As the ship's engines rumble to life and they leave the harbor, a new terror sets in. They are entering the Atlantic, the hunting ground of the Kriegsmarine. For the last 3 years, Walter cheered every time he heard a radio report of a U-boat sinking an Allied transport. He celebrated the tonnage numbers. Now, he realizes the grim irony. He is the tonnage. The ship pitches and rolls. Seasickness spreads through the hold like a plague. The smell of vomit, unwashed bodies, and diesel fuel makes the air thick and unbreathable. At night, they hear depth charges exploding in the distance. Boom, boom. The men lie in their bunks, staring at the steel ceiling. "If a torpedo hits us," Walter whispers, "we drown in the dark like rats." Walter grips the metal frame of his bunk. He prays to a God he hasn't spoken to in years. Please let the German aim be bad. Please let the U-boat miss. But the torpedo never comes. The voyage takes 3 weeks. 3 weeks of darkness, fear, and boredom. But also 3 weeks of revelation. Every day, the American guards come down. They don't carry whips. They carry cartons of cigarettes. They trade with the prisoners. A German Iron Cross medal for a pack of Camels, a belt buckle for a magazine. Walter finds a copy of Life magazine left by a guard. He can't read the English articles, but he looks at the pictures. He sees photos of New York City, of Detroit car factories, of vast wheat fields in Kansas. The photos are in color. He looks at the advertisements: refrigerators, toasters, new Fords, women in nylon stockings. He thinks of his home in Cologne. The last letter from his mother said they were boiling tulip bulbs for soup. The city was blacked out every night. He looks back at the magazine. This country isn't fighting for its survival, he realizes. It is fighting with one hand tied behind its back.
June 1943. The engines slow down. The rocking motion stops.
Up on deck. Everyone up.
The prisoners stumble up the ladders, blinking in the bright sunlight. The fresh air hits them like a physical blow. They crowd the rails. And then a silence falls over the thousands of men, a silence of absolute awe. They are sailing into New York Harbor. Rising out of the mist is the Statue of Liberty. Walter has seen cartoons of it in Nazi papers, usually mocking it, but in person it is colossal. It stands as a sentinel at the gateway to the New World. But it is what lies behind the statue that shatters Walter's reality. The skyline of Manhattan. The skyscrapers pierce the clouds. The Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, a wall of glass, steel and stone. And it is whole. There are no craters, no burned-out shells of buildings, no barrage balloons. The sun glints off millions of intact windows. Ferries are crisscrossing the harbor. Cars are driving along the shoreline. Walter looks at Hans. Hans is crying openly. "We lost. Look at this. We never had a chance. For years, Goebbels had told them that America was weak, degenerate, a mongrel nation on the verge of collapse. Looking at the skyline of New York, Walter realizes he has been fighting a lie. The ship docks, but they do not stay in New York. They are processed efficiently. They are deloused, sprayed with white DDT powder until they looked like ghosts. They are given new clothes. Not prison stripes, but old American military fatigues with the letters PW stamped in bold black ink on the back and legs. PW, prisoner of war. They are marched to a train station. A massive steam locomotive is waiting. It looks like a beast compared to the smaller European trains. "Where are we going?" Walter asks a guard who speaks a little German. The guard grins. "Aliceville." "Where's that?" "Alabama, the South. Cotton country." Walter knows nothing of Alabama. He imagines a jungle. He imagines a swamp. He boards the train. He takes a window seat. The whistle blows, and the train lurches forward. They are heading into the belly of the beast. They are heading into the heart of America.
The train chugs out of the industrial sprawl of the Northeast and heads south. For Walter and the thousands of prisoners packed into the passenger cars, this journey becomes a psychological turning point. In Germany, the propaganda machine had painted a very specific picture of the United States. They were told America was a land of chaotic mongrel cities and desolate, lawless wilderness. They were told the American people were demoralized and starving, crushed by the Great Depression. The view from the train window shatters this illusion mile by mile. They pass through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. The landscape changes, but the message remains the same: space. To a European, the sheer scale of the American continent is incomprehensible. In Europe, nations fight wars over strips of land 50 miles wide. Here, the train travels for hours without seeing a town. Endless forests, rolling hills, fields of corn and wheat that stretch to the horizon. Walter presses his face against the glass. He sees highways running parallel to the tracks. They are not empty. They are filled with civilian cars. Not military trucks, but family sedans, Fords, Chevrolets, Buicks. In Germany, private fuel consumption had been banned years ago. Here, people are driving just to visit neighbors. Night falls, and then comes the biggest shock of all. Lights. Walter flinches instinctively when the train passes a town. Streetlights are blazing, house windows are glowing with yellow warmth. Neon signs flicker at diners and gas stations. For 4 years, Europe has lived in the dark. The blackout was a way of life. A single lit cigarette could invite a British bomber. But here, there are no blackouts. There is no fear of the sky. America is ablaze with electricity. It is a display of arrogance and safety that humiliates the German soldiers. It says, "We are so far from your war, we don't even need to hide." Inside the train, the guards are relaxed. They leave the doors to the cars unlocked. "Where would you run?" a guard asked Walter, gesturing to the endless woods outside. "It's 1,000 miles through the ocean. And even if you get there, you have to swim to Germany." The prisoners realize the geography itself is their prison walls. The train stops frequently to take on water and coal. These stops are tense moments. The train pulls into small town stations, depots in the rural Tennessee or Mississippi. Word has spread that the Nazis are coming. Crowds of locals gather on the platforms. They stand back, watching the train with a mixture of curiosity and anger. Many of these families have sons fighting in Europe. They have gold stars in their windows, signifying a child lost in the war. Walter shrinks back in his seat. He expects rocks. He expects spit. He expects a mob to storm the train and drag them out. This is what would happen in Germany if a train of Russian prisoners stopped in a village. The window is open to let in the breeze. A group of American women stands nearby. They're wearing simple cotton dresses. They look at the train. Walter locks eyes with an older woman. Her expression is not one of hatred. It is one of confusion. She looks at Walter's face, young, tired, dirty, frightened. "They're just boys,"
she hears her say. "They're just babies." She steps forward. The military police guard moves to intercept her, but she waves him off. She reaches into a basket and pulls out a sandwich. Ham and cheese on white bread. She walks to the window and holds it out to Walter. Walter freezes. Is it poisoned? Is it a trick? He looks at her eyes. There is no malice there, only a mother's pity. He reaches out a trembling hand and takes the sandwich. "Thank you," he whispers in German. "Danke." She nods and walks away. Walter holds the sandwich. He doesn't eat it immediately. He stares at it. This act of kindness confuses him more than the violence of the war. He has been trained to hate these people. He has been trained to believe they are subhuman gangsters. Why are they feeding him? He eats the sandwich. It is the best thing he has ever tasted, but it tastes like defeat. How can you maintain your hatred for an enemy who feeds you when you are defenseless? The train lurches forward. Walter wipes a tear from his cheek before the other men can see. The armor of his Nazi indoctrination has taken another hit.
June 2, 1943. The heat rises. The air becomes thick and heavy. They have entered the deep south. The train slows to a crawl and finally hisses to a halt. The conductor shouts, "Aliceville, everybody out!" It is night. The air is filled with the sound of crickets and cicadas, a deafening electric buzz that the Germans have never heard before. The humidity hits them like a wet blanket. It is suffocating. They grab their kit bags and step onto the platform. Floodlights blind them. "Move, move, schnell!" The military police are more serious here. This is the end of the line. The prisoners are formed into columns of 4. They begin the march from the station to the camp. The town of Aliceville is asleep, but eyes are watching from behind curtains. The sound of thousands of boots hitting the pavement echoes through the quiet streets. They march for a few miles. Then, out of the darkness, a city of light appears. Camp Aliceville. It is enormous. It covers 400 acres. It contains 400 barracks buildings. It is surrounded by 2 parallel fences of 12-foot-high barbed wire. Guard towers rise at regular intervals, their searchlights sweeping the perimeter. To Walter, it looks like a concentration camp. He tightens his grip on his bag. This is it, he thinks. This is where we die. They are marched through the main gate. The heavy wire gates swing shut behind them with a metallic clang that signals the end of their freedom. They are herded into a processing area. They are stripped, searched again, and assigned a prisoner number. Walter is no longer Walter. He is number 5G4322. He is assigned to Compound B. He walks toward his barracks. He expects a wooden shack with a dirt floor, maybe some straw to sleep on. He opens the door to the barracks. He stops. It is a sturdy wooden building. It smells of fresh pine and disinfectant. There are rows of metal cots, real mattresses, clean white sheets, wool blankets. In the center of the room is a pot-bellied coal stove for heating. Walter walks to a cot and touches the mattress. It is soft. He sits down. He bounces slightly. "Hans," he says to his friend, "pinch me." Hans is checking the bathroom at the end of the hall. He runs back, his eyes wide. "Walter, come look! The water! It's hot!" Hot running water. For soldiers who have spent 2 years living in holes in the desert, covered in lice and sand, a hot shower is a luxury beyond kings. They strip off their clothes and stand under the water for 20 minutes. They scrub the war off their bodies. The gray water swirls down the drain, taking the Sahara dust with it. They dry off and put on fresh pajamas provided by the U.S. Army. They lie in the clean beds. "It's a trick," a cynical sergeant mutters from the corner. "They fatten the pig before they slaughter it." Walter stares at the ceiling. He doesn't care. If this is a trick, it is a beautiful one. He falls asleep instantly.
Morning comes. A bugle sounds. The prisoners line up for roll call. They are tense. They wait for the forced labor to begin. They wait for the whips. Instead, a smell wafts across the camp. Bacon, coffee, bread. They are marched to the mess hall. It is a large building with rows of cables. They grab metal trays and move down the line. The American cooks pile food onto the trays. Scrambled eggs, bacon, oatmeal, toast with butter and jam, coffee with sugar and cream, oranges. Walter stares at his tray. In the German army, this would be a feast for a general. Here, it is breakfast for a prisoner. He sits down and eats. He eats with a ferocity that frightens him. He wipes the plate clean with a piece of bread. But then, a terrible sound fills the mess hall. Retching. Men are running outside. They are vomiting in the grass. Their stomachs, shrunken and sensitive after months of near starvation in Tunisia, cannot handle the richness of the American food. The grease, the fat, the sugar, it is too much. The American doctors rush over. They are not angry. They are concerned. "Slow down," an American doctor yells, holding up his hands. "You'll kill yourselves. Eat slow." Over the next few weeks, the doctors put the prisoners on a special diet to reintroduce rich foods gradually. They treat the malnutrition. They fix teeth. They provide glasses for men who lost them in battle. The prisoners begin to gain weight. Their cheeks fill out. The dark circles under their eyes vanish. The Afrika look, the gaunt, haunted stare, disappears. They begin to call the camp by a new name. They don't call it prison. They call it the Goldene Käfig, the Golden Cage. It is a prison, yes. They cannot leave. But inside the wire, life is better than it was in the army. Better even than it was back home in Germany. But why? Why were the Americans treating them this way? Was it pure altruism? Was it stupidity? A week after their arrival, the camp commander, Colonel Stovall, assembles the German officers. Colonel Stovall is a stern man, but fair. He stands before the gathered Germans. He holds up a small book. This, he says, is the Geneva Convention of 1929. The United States of America signed this treaty. We gave our word that we would treat prisoners of war with humanity. We do not break our word. He pauses, looking at the faces of the enemy. We will feed you the same rations as our own soldiers. We will house you in conditions comparable to our own troops. You will receive medical care. You will be allowed to practice your religion. You will be allowed to send mail home. But there is a second unspoken reason for this treatment, a strategic reason. The U.S. government knew that thousands of American boys were being held in German POW camps in Europe. They knew that if word got back to Germany that the Americans were torturing prisoners, the Nazis would retaliate against the American POWs. The Golden Cage was an insurance policy. By treating Walter well, the U.S. government was trying to buy safety for its own sons across the ocean. Stovall continues, "However, you are still soldiers. You will maintain discipline, and you will work. But you will be paid." "Paid?" the German officers murmur. "According to the convention, enlisted men will work. You will be paid 80 cents a day in canteen coupons. You can use these to buy supplies at the camp store." 80 cents a day. It doesn't sound like much, but to a prisoner with zero expenses, it is a fortune. That afternoon, the canteen opens. Walter walks in with his first booklet of coupons. The shelves are stocked. Toiletries, soap, shaving cream, stationery to write home, snacks, peanuts, Coca-Cola, beer. Yes, beer. The camp allows the sale of weak 3.3% alcohol beer. Walter buys a bottle of Coca-Cola, and a bag of peanuts. He sits on the steps of his barracks. He opens the cold bottle. The carbonation burns his throat. He looks through the wire fence at the pine trees. He realizes that Goebbels lied about everything. The Americans aren't monsters. They are a people of rules. They are a people who follow a contract, even with their enemies. And in that moment, Walter's allegiance to the Third Reich begins to crack. Not because he was beaten into submission, but because he was treated with a dignity he didn't think he deserved.
However, Camp Aliceville is not a paradise. It is a political battleground. While Walter is grateful, there are others in the camp who are not. The camp is divided. There are the regular soldiers, the conscripts, the weary men who just want to go home. And then there are the true believers, the hardcore Nazis, the SS men who were captured alongside the regular army. They are furious at the softness of men like Walter. They view enjoying American food as treason. They view speaking English as collaborating with the enemy. Inside the barracks, a shadow war begins. The Nazi hardliners try to maintain control. They organize secret honor courts. They threaten those who are too friendly with the guards. One night, Walter is polishing his boots. A tall, blonde sergeant named Mueller approaches him. Mueller is a fanatic. He still believes Hitler will win the war with wonder weapons. "I saw you laughing with that guard today, Walter," Mueller hisses. Walter doesn't look up. "He gave me a light for my cigarette. You are becoming an American. When the Fuhrer wins, traitors like you will be the first against the wall." Walter looks at Mueller. "Look around you, Mueller. Look at the food. Look at the supplies. Do you really think Germany is winning?" Mueller kicks Walter's bunk and storms off. The Americans are aware of this tension. They know they have to do more than just feed the bodies of these men. They have to deprogram their minds. They launch a daring experiment. They will decide to create a university of barbed wire. They will flood the camp with books, films, and newspapers. They will not force democracy down the prisoners' throats. They will simply let them see the truth and choose for themselves. And the most powerful weapon they have is not a gun, it is the mail. One day, mail call arrives. A letter for Walter. It is from his mother in Cologne. He tears it open. The handwriting is shaky. "My dear Walter, we are alive, but barely. The bombing is every night now. The house is gone. We are living in the cellar of Aunt Gerda's bakery. There is no food. We are eating rats. I pray you are safe." Walter holds the letter. He looks at his own belly, full of American beef and potatoes. He looks at the peace of the Alabama afternoon. The contrast breaks his heart. He realizes that the people destroying his country are not the Americans. It is the madness of his own leaders who refuse to surrender a lost war. He takes the letter and goes to the camp library. He asks for a book on American history. He wants to understand this strange, contradictory, powerful country. The re-education of Walter has begun. By the autumn of 1943, the labor shortage in the United States is critical. Millions of American men are overseas fighting. In Alabama, the crops are ripening in the fields, but there is no one to harvest them. The peanuts and cotton, vital for the war effort, are in danger of rotting on the vine. Colonel Stovall issues the order. The prisoners of Camp Aliceville will be deployed to the farms. Walter and his unit climb into the back of trucks. They're driven out of the camp gates. It is the first time they have been outside the wire in months. They stare hungrily at the passing world, the pine forests, the small wooden farmhouses, and the red clay roads. They arrive at a massive cotton plantation. The farmer, an old man named Mr. Henderson, looks at them skeptically.
He has sent his 2 sons to fight the Germans in Italy. Now the government has sent Germans to save his farm. It is a bitter pill to swallow. "All right," Henderson grunts to the guard. "Do they know what to do?" The guard shrugs. They're quick learners. Walter has never seen a cotton plant. He is a city boy from Cologne. He looks at the white, fluffy balls bursting from the sharp husks. He looks at the vast white ocean of the field. The work is brutal. The Alabama sun in September is still fierce. The cotton balls have sharp points that tear at the cuticles. Bending over for 10 hours a day makes the back scream in agony. But Walter works. He works with the discipline of a soldier. He finds a rhythm. Pick, pull, bag. Pick, pull, bag. At midday, the whistle blows. Lunch. Walter sits under the shade of a pecan tree. He opens his lunch pail, packed by the camp kitchen. Ham sandwiches, an apple, a cookie. Mr. Henderson watches them. He sees these young men, stripped of their uniforms, sweating in the dirt just to bring in his crop. He sees them laughing, sharing water, nursing their bleeding fingers. The image of the Nazi monster begins to fade. On the 3rd day, Mr. Henderson walks over to the tree. He is holding a basket. He says, "Peaches, from the orchard." He sets the basket down. Walter looks up. "Thank you, sir." Henderson nods. "You boys work hard. My boys, well, I hope someone is giving them a peach over there in Italy." It is a moment of shared humanity. The farmer realizes that these prisoners are not so different from his own sons. They are young men caught in the gears of history. By the end of the harvest, the prisoners at Aliceville have saved the local economy. They harvest thousands of tons of peanuts and cotton, and in doing so, they weave themselves into the community.
However, working in the fields exposes Walter to a contradiction that confuses and disturbs him, a contradiction that exposes the dark underbelly of American society. In the fields, the German prisoners often work alongside hired local laborers. Many of these laborers are African American. Walter watches them. He sees that the black workers are not allowed to drink from the same water bucket as the white farmer. He sees that they have to step off the sidewalk in town when a white person passes. He sees the dilapidated shacks they live in. And yet, Walter, an enemy soldier, a man who fought for a regime based on racial supremacy, is treated better than the black American citizens. One day, while loading a truck, Walter speaks to a black worker named Elijah. "Why do you fight for this country?" Walter asks in broken English. "You treat you like Untermenschen." Elijah wipes sweat from his brow. He looks at Walter. "This is my country too, Fritz. Just because it's broken don't mean I don't love it. We're fighting for a double V, victory over Hitler over there and victory over racism here." Walter is silenced. He thinks of the Nazi ideology he was raised on, the master race. He looks at Elijah, a man of dignity and strength, suffering under a system of oppression, yet still holding on to hope. It is a mirror. Walter realizes that America is not perfect, it is flawed. But unlike Germany, where dissent is crushed, here the struggle is out in the open. It is a complicated lesson, but a vital one.
Back at the camp, the sun goes down, but the activity does not stop. If the fields are for the body, the evenings are for the mind. The University of Barbed Wire is in full swing. The prisoners, many of whom were teachers, professors, and musicians before the war, organize classes. Walter signs up for English 101. He sits in a classroom built from scrap wood. The teacher is a former literature professor from Heidelberg who was drafted as a private. To understand the American, the professor says, you must understand his language. It is a language of commerce, of speed, and of informality. They study American newspapers. They read the New York Times and the Birmingham News. This is the genius of the American re-education plan. They do not feed the prisoners propaganda, they simply give them access. In Germany, the news was controlled. Every victory was exaggerated, every defeat was hidden. Here, Walter reads about American defeats. He reads editorials criticizing President Roosevelt. "Hans," Walter whispers one evening in the library, "look at this. This paper says the president's tax plan is stupid, and they printed it." Hans reads it. "In Berlin, the editor would be shot." Yes, that is the difference. They are also allowed to create art. The camp orchestra, armed with instruments donated by the Red Cross and the YMCA, practices Beethoven and Mozart. They give concerts on Sunday afternoons. The camp commander invites the townspeople of Aliceville to stand outside the fence and listen to the music. Picture this scene. A Sunday evening in 1944. The sun setting behind the pine trees. Inside the fence, a German orchestra plays a symphony. Outside the fence, hundreds of Alabama locals, farmers, shopkeepers, widows, sit on the grass on blankets, listening to the music of the enemy. For an hour, the wire disappears. The music drifts over the fence. There is no war. There is only beauty. Walter plays the violin in the second row. He looks through the fence at the American families. He sees a little girl dancing to the music. He closes his eyes and plays for her. He plays for the childhood he lost. He plays for the peace he hopes is coming.
But the war is not over, and the hardest battles are fought in the mind. The camp newspaper, Der Zaun, becomes a battleground. The anti-Nazi faction begins to gain control. They publish articles questioning the wisdom of the war. They publish factual reports of the Eastern Front, showing the collapse of the German lines. The hardliners, led by Sergeant Mueller, try to suppress it. They burn copies of the paper. They beat up the editors in the latrines at night. But the tide is turning. June 6th, 1944, D-Day. The news hits the camp like a thunderclap. The Allies have landed in France. The fortress Europe has been breached. The hardliners gather in the barracks. "We will push them back into the sea," Mueller shouts. "The Fuhrer has a plan." But Walter knows better. He has seen the factories in Pennsylvania. He has seen the fields in Tennessee. He knows the mathematical impossibility of a German victory. He sits on his bunk and writes a letter to his mother. "Do not worry, Mama. It will be over soon. Just survive. Stay in the cellar. When the Americans come, do not be afraid. They are not what we were told." He is betting his mother's life on the humanity of the soldiers he once tried to kill.
1945. The end comes not with a bang, but with a horrifying revelation. Germany surrenders in May. The war in Europe is over. The camp erupts in a mix of relief and anxiety. What happens to us now? But before they can go home, the Americans have one last lesson to teach. The camp commander orders everyone to the camp theater. Attendance is mandatory, the order says. No exceptions. Walter files in. The lights go down. The projector whirs to life. It is not a Hollywood movie. It is newsreel footage shot by the Allied troops liberating the concentration camps. Buchenwald, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen. The screen flickers with images that defy comprehension. Skeletal bodies stacked like cordwood, gas chambers, mass graves, the hollow eyes of the survivors. A silence descends on the theater, a silence so heavy it feels like it could crush the roof. For years, rumors of these camps had circulated, but most soldiers dismissed them. Propaganda, they said. The German soldier fights with honor. We do not do this. Now the proof is 10 feet high. Walter stares at the screen. He feels sick. He feels the ham sandwich from lunch rising in his throat. He looks at the uniform he is wearing, the remnants of his German identity. He feels dirty. "It's a lie," a voice shouts from the back. It is Mueller. "It's a Hollywood trick. Fake models." "Shut up," another German voice screams back. "Look at it. Look at what we did." A fight breaks out, but most men just sit there, weeping or vomiting. Walter leaves the theater. He walks to the perimeter fence. He grips the wire until his hands bleed. He realizes now why the world hated them. He realizes that while he was fighting for fatherland and honor, his government was building a machine of industrial murder. The golden cage had protected him from the war, but it could not protect him from the truth. The shame washes over him. He looks at the American guard in the tower. The guard is looking down at him. He cannot meet his eyes. How can he ever go home? How can he look his mother in the face? How can he be a German after this?
The war is over, but the return is delayed. Germany is in ruins. There is no infrastructure to handle 300,000 returning prisoners. So, they wait. The mood in Camp Aliceville shifts. The arrogance is gone. The Nazi salutes stop. The Heil Hitlers are replaced by quiet nods. Walter spends his final months in America working. He saves every penny of his 80 cents a day. He buys chocolate, coffee, and soap from the canteen, not for himself, but to take home. He knows these things will be more valuable than gold in the ruins of Cologne. He spends time in the camp workshop. He takes a piece of scrap wood and begins to carve. He carves a small figure of a woman holding a basket. It represents the woman at the train station who gave him the sandwich. He wants to leave something behind. He gives the carving to the camp commander's secretary, a woman who had helped him mail his letters. "For you," he says, "so you remember that not all of us were monsters." She takes it. She has tears in her eyes. "We know, Walter. We know."
Early 1946, the order finally comes: repatriation. The trains arrive at the Aliceville depot, the same depot where they arrived in the dark 3 years ago. The town comes out to watch them leave, but this time, the atmosphere is different. There is no fear. Some of the farmers are there to say goodbye to the workers who harvested their crops. Some of the locals wave. Walter climbs onto the train. He looks out the window at the pine trees, the red clay, the sleepy Main Street. He entered this town a brainwashed boy, terrified of death. He leaves it a man, fed, educated, and burdened with the terrible truth. He has spent the prime of his youth behind barbed wire, and yet he feels that this prison saved his life. If he had stayed in Europe, he would be dead in a Russian ditch or buried under the rubble of a French farmhouse. America gave him a pause, a timeout from the madness of the 20th century. As the train pulls away, Walter makes a vow. It is a crazy vow for a man with no money heading to a destroyed country. "I will come back," he whispers. "I will come back and tell them thank you." The train gathers speed. The golden cage disappears behind the trees. Walter turns his face toward the east, toward the ruins, toward the hard life that awaits him. But he carries a light inside him now, a light kindled in Alabama.
The ship docks in Rotterdam, or Bremerhaven, in the spring of 1946. Walter walks down the gangplank. He is carrying a duffel bag filled with American soap, coffee, and cigarettes. He steps onto European soil. The ground feels cursed. Germany is not the country he left. It is a moonscape. The cities, Cologne, Hamburg, Berlin, are piles of brick and twisted steel. The smell of death, unburied bodies, and wet ash hangs over everything. He travels to Cologne. There are no trains running. He hitchhikes on military trucks. He walks. When he finds the street where he grew up, it is gone. There is only a crater where his apartment building stood. He finds his mother living in a basement cellar with 3 other families. She is thin, frail, and gray. When she sees him, healthy, Tanned, strong from 3 years of Alabama beef and sunshine, she collapses. She touches his face as if he were a ghost. "I thought you were dead," she sobs. "Everyone said you were dead." Life in post-war Germany is a nightmare. It is called Stunde Null, hour zero. The currency is worthless. People are trading family heirlooms for a sack of potatoes. The winter of 1946-47 is brutal. It is known as the Hunger Winter. People are freezing to death in their beds. But Walter survives, and he survives because of Aliceville. The fat reserves he built up in the camp keep him warm. The muscles he built in the cotton fields allow him to work clearing rubble. The coffee and cigarettes he brought back are used to bribe officials for coal to keep his mother alive. The golden cage continues to protect him even now that he is free. Every night, huddled under thin blankets in the freezing cellar, Walter closes his eyes and goes to his happy place. He doesn't dream of the Third Reich. He dreams of the mess hall in Aliceville. He dreams of the smell of pine trees. He dreams of the taste of ice-cold Coca-Cola. Alabama becomes a mythical land in his memory, a Shangri-La that saved his soul.
1948. The Marshall Plan begins. The Americans, who destroyed Germany, now return to rebuild it. Walter gets a job in a factory. He marries. He has children. He tries to rebuild a normal life on top of the ruins. But the connection to America is not broken. One day, a package arrives. It has U.S. stamps on it. Walter opens it. It is from a farmer in Pickens County, Alabama, Mr. Henderson. Inside, there is a letter. "Dear Walter, we heard things are bad over there. The harvest was good this year. We thought you might need this." Under the letter are cans of peanut butter, dried milk, flour, sugar, a pair of warm socks. Walter sits at his kitchen table and weeps. Why? Why would a farmer in Alabama care about a former enemy soldier in Cologne? He realizes that the bond forged in the cotton fields was real. It wasn't just a prisoner-guard relationship. It was human. Walter writes back, "Dear Mr. Henderson, you have saved us again. I promise you I will never forget this. Tell the trees I miss them." For the next 20 years, the letters go back and forth. They exchange photos. Walter sends wooden toys he carved for Henderson's grandchildren. Henderson sends pecans from the orchard. The world moves on. The Cold War freezes Europe. The Berlin Wall goes up, but a thin paper line of friendship stretches across the Atlantic, connecting a former Wehrmacht soldier to an Alabama farmer.
Decades pass. The 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. Walter grows old. His hair turns white. He retires. Germany rises from the ashes to become an economic powerhouse. The war becomes history. The younger generation asks questions, but the older generation remains silent. They don't want to talk about the shame. But Walter talks. He tells his grandchildren strange stories. Not stories of battles or glory. He tells them stories about eating steak in a prison. He tells them about a woman giving him a sandwich on a train. Grandpa is telling his fairy tales again, the children say. They don't believe him. A prison with an orchestra. A prison where you got paid. It sounds impossible. In the 1990s, the letters from Alabama stop. Mr. Henderson has passed away. Walter feels a piece of himself die. He looks at the map of the United States on his wall. He traces the line to Alabama. "I have to go back," he tells his wife. "Why? It's been 50 years. It's just a field now. No one will remember you." "I have to say thank you," he insists. "I never said it properly. I was too proud. I was too young. Now I am old enough to be humble." But life gets in the way. Health issues, money. The trip is postponed and postponed. Until 2007. Walter is 86 years old.
His doctor tells him his heart is weak. He shouldn't travel. Walter looks at the doctor. If I don't go now, I will die with a debt unpaid. I would rather die on the plane to Alabama than die in this bed.
He buys the ticket. He travels with his daughter. The flight is long, Frankfurt to Atlanta, then a rental car drive west, across the state line into Alabama. Walter looks out the window. The landscape hasn't changed. The same red clay, the same kudzu vines swallowing the telephone poles, the same oppressive heat. His heart races. Is he making a mistake? Will they hate him? Will they look at him and see only a Nazi? They pull into the town of Aliceville. It is quieter now. The cotton boom is over. The town is sleepy. They drive to the site of the camp. It is gone. The barracks were sold off for lumber in 1947. The guard towers were torn down. The barbed wire was rolled up and melted down. There is only an industrial park and a few chimneys standing in the tall grass. Walter steps out of the car. He leans on his cane. He closes his eyes and listens. He listens for the sound of the orchestra. He listens for the tramp of boots. There is only the wind and the pines. He feels a crushing disappointment. There is nothing here, just ghosts. Let's go to the museum, his daughter says gently. They said there was a museum in town.
A drive to the Aliceville Museum. Walter walks to the door. He is nervous. He straightens his tie. He is a German invading this town for the second time. He opens the door. The museum director looks up. She sees an old man with a cane, looking around with eyes full of recognition. She knows instantly. "You were here," she says softly. It is not a question. Walter nods. "I was in Compound B, Barracks 4. She comes around the desk. She doesn't shake his hand. She hugs him. "Welcome home," she says. Walter breaks. The dam he has built around his emotions for 60 years shatters. He stands in the lobby of the museum and sobs. He cries for the boy he was. He cries for the friends he lost. He cries for the kindness of strangers. Word spreads through the town. A prisoner is back. People start coming to the museum, not to protest, to meet him. An old man approaches Walter. "Did you work the harvest of 43? "Yes," Walter says. "On the Henderson farm." The man's eyes widen. "My daddy was friends with Mr. Henderson. I remember you. You gave me a wooden car." "I carved many cars," Walter smiles. "I still have it. It's on my mantle." The two old men, one American, one German, stare at each other. The years melt away. They are not enemies. They are survivors of the same history.
A makeshift reception is organized. The local newspaper comes. The mayor comes. They ask Walter to speak. He stands at the podium. He is 86 years old, tired and emotional. He looks out at the sea of American faces. "I do not have a prepared speech," he begins, his English rusty but clear. "I came here to say 2 words. Thank you." The room is silent. "I came here in 1943 and I was filled with hate. I was told you were monsters. I was told you would kill me." He lifts his hand and points to the photos on the museum wall. Photos of the camp, the food, the smiling prisoners. "Instead, you treated me like a son. You fed me when my own country was starving. You educated me when my own country was burning books. You showed me that a man is not defined by his uniform, but by his heart." He pauses, wiping his eyes. "I went back to Germany, and it was hard, very hard. But every time I wanted to give up, I thought of Aliceville. I thought of the peaches Mr. Henderson gave me. I thought of the music, and it gave me hope." He looks directly at the audience. "You did not just save my life.
You saved my humanity. You taught me how to be a free man. And for that, I love you." He bows his head. The room erupts. People are standing. They are applauding. Some are crying. In that moment, the war is truly over. The final treaty is signed not with ink, but with tears, in a small museum in Alabama.
Walter spends 3 days in Aliceville. He walks the old grounds. He visits the graves of the few German soldiers who died in the camp from natural causes. He lays flowers. When he leaves a donation, a check to keep the museum running. "Keep the story alive," he tells the director. "Tell the world that enemies can become friends." He flies back to Germany. He dies 2 years later, peacefully, in his sleep. But his story remains. The story of the German POWs in America is a forgotten chapter of World War II. It is overshadowed by the horror of the Holocaust and the heroism of D-Day. But it is a vital story. It is a testament to the power of the Geneva Convention. It proves that holding the moral high ground, even in the midst of a brutal war, yields dividends for generations. Because the Americans treated the prisoners well, those prisoners went back to Germany and helped rebuild it into a democracy and an ally. They became the bridge between two nations. They called it the Golden Cage. But for men like Walter, it wasn't a cage at all. It was a cocoon. They entered as soldiers of a dark regime. They emerged as men. And 70 years later, the echo of that kindness still rings out in a small town in Alabama, where an old enemy came home to say, "Thank you."